Morning everybody, it's Nick. I hope everybody's well. I want to just have a chat today. I guess it's about the menopause, but I think it could be applied in principles to anything that kind of makes you feel a bit shit really, and some observations on what we can and can't do to help with that. So I suppose taking the menopause as the first subject and just sharing that journey a little bit more for those people who are also going through it. And I know, and this is one of the frustrating things actually, is that it is so different and so personalised. So, you can speak to 100 women and you can get 100 different stories on what their experience of the menopause is. And, the symptoms that were really, really killing me were the tiredness and the lack of motivation and just not being able to do stuff. And actually we've really cracked that, which is fantastic news. So I've got lots more energy. My motivation is definitely back. I'm up and about all day. I'm generally not having to take naps in the day. I'm pretty much on the go. I'm swimming lots. And I'm just feeling physically much better than I was. But on the other hand, I've had a whole new set of symptoms crop up, which is just so frustrating because you get on top of one lot and another lot comes in. And some of that is actually the side effects of the medication and stuff that I take. So what I have noticed of late is that my appetite has absolutely gone through the roof, and I'm eating. I just can't seem to stop eating, quite frankly. Now I'm actually on medication to control my insulin because I'm insulin resistant, which should theoretically control your sugar cravings and so forth, which is where some of the middle-age spread and the ballooning and the weight gain can come from. But what can happen after a while is your body can become immune or effectively override the medication. So you have to have, the rule is with one of them I take, you do 3 months on and 3 weeks off. And I've done that, but my body's still overriding it, which is just bloody classic for my body, that it's got a mind of its own. And so, my appetite's gone through the roof. Some of the weight's gone back on. And the other thing I'm finding is that I've just got really bad constant backache. I'm very bloated. And actually, for the first time in a couple of years, I've had some bleeding. So it's very different symptoms. So yes, the tiredness has gone, but it's almost like I've kind of gone back into a PMT type scenario where the sugar cravings are there. I'm eating loads. I am feeling quite raw, so I get very anxious and I get very irritable and very upset very easily. More so than my natural demeanour. So you can imagine that that's actually quite a lot because I'm quite a feeling sensitive person anyway. And I do find it frustrating, to be honest, that you deal with one set of symptoms and then another set comes along. So I have got my consultant appointment next week, and I've had to go for an ultrasound, I think, early next week, because the combination of the backache, the bloating, and the bleeding is obviously a bit worrying. And some of that is because, the bottom line is I am putting synthetic hormones into me, which we can, have a debate about. Although for me, I don't really think there is a debate, because like anything, like antidepressants or any type of medication that you do or don't choose to take, I think it's a very personal decision. I think it should be an informed decision which is discussed between you and your GP or your consultant, and you make your own decision on it. For me, not taking particularly estrogen meant that I couldn't get off the sofa. I just felt so exhausted and so ill. So that was a decision I took. It does have some side effects if you end up taking too much, because with natural estrogen in your body will stop absorbing it once it's got enough. But when you're actually putting in synthetic, and by the way, no, I don't use the one that's made of horseweed, then your body doesn't. It just carries on taking it. So obviously they have to, and I'm monitored very carefully. Every couple of months I have blood tests, and I'm monitored to make sure that I'm not absorbing too much. But I think we definitely got to the stage where I was on very, very high levels of estrogen, which have now come down. I'm taking and much smaller levels. But I guess this is one of the frustrating things about the menopause, is that you don't know, you deal with one thing and then something else comes along and you just don't know what it's going to be. And it's interesting because I'm reading a new book by Darcy Stenck, which is it's a book on the menopause, and on one hand it's incredibly interesting because she talks about she draws a lot of parallels with other mammals who go through it, and actually the only mammal that goes through a menopause like us and then has life afterwards is actually the killer whale. A lot of animals either don't have menopause, or if they do, it's at the end of their life. But the killer whale has a long life after the menopause, and actually one of the really cool things about it is that she becomes the leader of the pod, because what happens is she's no longer constrained by childbearing or looking after a young. She has a lot more free time, but also she has all of this wisdom and experience that the rest of the pod really are really keen to tap into. So she effectively becomes the leader of the pod. So that whole that analogy, that looking at what happens to a postmenopausal woman in the killer whales is really inspiring, because it really changes the narrative about who we are, and that aging doesn't have to be this negative thing. And I found that quite inspiring. But the other side of the book, she talks a lot in the book about freeing herself from the stereotype or having to be feminine, what it means from a sexual perspective and so forth. And I must admit that doesn't resonate with me, because pre or post menopause, I've never stopped wanting to be a woman. I've never stopped wanting to embrace my femininity. That's just part of who I am. And I might not have the energy some days to look really glam and all the rest of it, but actually when I go out and so forth, or when I'm doing stuff, I dress for me. I put my makeup on and do my hair and wear a beautiful dress because that's what I want to wear, and I haven't lost that side of my femininity, and nor do I want to, and I've never ever felt constrained by it. So that part of the book doesn't resonate quite so deeply with me. Although there's lots of other stuff that do. One of the big things for me, I've talked about before, is that loss of that motivation and drive that I used to have. But I think, in a funny way, that's coming back in a different way, and perhaps more gentler way, and perhaps I'm now becoming more discerning and being able to really focus on the stuff that's really important. But behind all of that, also what I wanted to say is that I still have a lot of difficult days. Some of which is because I am menopausal, and the fluctuating hormones, that they're not a joke, and the anxiety and the depression and the just the discomfort that can go with them is really quite difficult at times. And I also think still weaved in there is the fact that I do have struggles with anxiety. I do have struggles with being uncomfortable, with being in a position like when I'm parenting and I don't know what I'm doing and so forth. I do still have self-esteem issues, And one of the things that I have found that's helped is when I'm feeling at my most vulnerable, when I'm feeling at my most raw and perhaps down on myself, that's actually when I tend to write most of my stuff. And that's when I tend to focus or try and say to myself, I want to focus on putting something inspirational out there and making somebody else feel good. And somehow that really does lift me. It really does lift me. So I guess that's a big observation that I've made, is that on the days when I feel ironically, my most raw or my most vulnerable, they're the days that I've probably written some stuff that can help other people the most, or I've probably, ironically enough, had the courage to share something, really raw and honest about either a lesson I've learned or something I've been through, in the hope that it can help somebody else. And Johan Hari, in his book Lost Connection, talks about this. One way we can help ourselves when we are feeling, we're feeling down, raw, vulnerable, whatever words we want to use, is just by actually reaching up and helping others. And I've found that enormously beneficial. And I think we'll continue to do so. So it's a bit of a mixed bag today. The moving beast of the menopause, which doesn't go away, it changes shape. And also just, some of the stuff that I do on the days when life isn't feeling so great. Actually, I find that if I can help others, it actually helps me. So I hope everybody's doing well. Speak soon. Bye.